You're good.
Call this meeting to order. We would like to acknowledge, we'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land of which we gather on is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Waki, Ottawa, and Mississaugas people. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for the February 24th, 2022 special council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? I have Councillor McBurney moving. I have Councillor Vinnersum seconding. Carson, it's all yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Deputy Reef-Site,
Yes.
Councillor Falconer. And it looks like Councillor Falconer's not in the meeting right now. Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hitterson,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes,
So that motion carries 6-0.
thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Not seeing or hearing anybody speak up. We have delegations, number none. Reports, 5.1, North Huron official plan. 5-year review, section 26, special meeting. We're going to start with the presentation from the Huron County planner. Let it up.
Great. Thank you, Reeve, and thank you for having me tonight, members of council. I also will note that we have Denise Van Amersfoort, the Huron County Manager of Planning, also in attendance tonight, and she'll be assisting me with my presentation. So I'm just going to share my presentation if you just give me a moment. If someone could just confirm that they're seeing the presentation slides, that would be great. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so the purpose of this special meeting of council this evening is to hold a public meeting for the North Huron official plan review. In terms of more specifically the purpose of the meeting, the intent of this meeting is essentially one of the more initial public meetings that you will have in the official plan process, just to discuss any revisions to the North Huron official plan. Often you'll see the acronym OP when we're speaking about official plans, just so everyone is aware of that. And the purpose is to discuss any revisions that may be required to the North Huron official plan. This meeting intends to provide members of the public with information on the official plan review process, receive feedback from the community on any possible revisions to the official plan, and to facilitate a discussion about any relevant local trends or conditions as they relate to development, growth, and resource protection, and how that could possibly be integrated into our official plan. In terms of more specifically about what the purpose of an official plan is, so an official plan at a high level, it is a policy document that provides direction for land use in a community. It includes a statement of vision and goals for the community as it relates to growth, development, and resource protection. Within that plan, there will be text policies in addition to land use designations, which is mapping that indicates what type of land is designated as which designation. And there is policies and goals for each designation depending on the land use type intended for that property. The official plan will provide broad direction to permitted uses and policies such as land division direction. And specifically the official plan, one of the tools in which it is implemented is through the use of the zoning bylaw. So North Huron also does have a zoning bylaw that helps to implement their official plan. In terms of the basis for the review of the official plan, council will recall on January 17th, they did provide direction to staff to initiate what's called the 5-year review of the North Huron official plan. The current North Huron official plan was adopted in 2004, and it was amalgamated from the previous Wingham, Blythe, and East Wawanach official plans. And involved in that was extensive community consultation. Furthermore, the North Huron official plan was most recently updated in 2013. In terms of reviews, the Planning Act, and specifically Section 26 of the Planning Act, requires a review of the official plan every 5 years. And more specifically, what Section 26 of the Planning Act is speaking to, and again, Council will recall that sometimes this initial public meeting is what's called a Section 26 meeting, just to go over any amendments that may be required. The Act requires assurance that the official plan conforms to any provincial plans. In this case, North Huron does not have any applicable provincial plans. An example of a provincial plan would be the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, for example. In that case, there are no applicable plans in North Huron. It also requires that the official plan have regard to matters of provincial interest outlined in Section 2 of the Act and also included in further detail in my accompanying report, and that it be consistent with the provincial policy statement issued under the Act. So the provincial policy statement was recently updated by the province in 2020. Furthermore, local official plans are required to conform to the county official plan. So that was further updated in 2021. So that's part of the basis for the review and provide some of the policy directions for the local official plan. But in addition, the review does provide the opportunity to update policies and their accompanying mapping or designations to ensure that they better reflect the current and future land use priorities that are specific to North Huron. In terms of the anticipated outcomes of the review, again, as mentioned in my previous slide, a part of that will be to provide some direction to implement some direction from the provincial policy statement here on County Official Plan, as well as the Planning Act. As well, the anticipated outcome of the review will be that it will better reflect the local community's vision in North Huron for growth and development, and to ensure that those policies reflect current and future local trends in North Huron. One of the trends being the increased demand for housing and increased demand for different forms of housing. So that is a significant change in local trends that we hope to take into account in this review. In terms of specific anticipated revisions, as I mentioned previously, the official plan does have various land use designations depending on the intended land use for that area. And the policies are subsequently arranged as follows. In terms of anticipated revisions to agriculture, we are intending to review the policies to reflect any direction provided for on-farm diversified agricultural uses. So this is taking into account recent direction from the province that speaks to permitting on-farm diversified uses on agricultural properties. And specifically, this would provide a little bit of policy direction for opportunities for wineries or opportunities for agritourism. Within the agriculture designation, we are also hoping to look at policies for additional residential units on agricultural parcels. Council may recall previously last year when they did the housing friendly review work with Denise that there was a bit of discussion about additional residential units in agriculture, and that would be something we would revisit as part of the 5-year review. As well, in terms of agriculture, we will be looking just to ensure that any references to the minimum distance separation formula, which is typically used in terms of separation distance between livestock barns and manure facilities, just making sure that those are up to date with and in line with the provincial direction on that. One update of note is the recent updates to the MDS provincial guideline provides the option for cemeteries to be considered a type A land use rather than type B, which may provide a little bit of less distance to livestock barns. And an example of how you would implement that locally would be at your official plan. So we will certainly be reviewing that to ensure that those are up to date. I'm going to hand it off to Denise to just speak to this slide about the natural environment designation.
Thanks, Hannah. I think I'll
Denise,
share.
Denise, just before, excuse me, Denise, it's Reeve Bailey. Just before you start, did you want us to listen to everything and ask questions later? Or sometimes some of the presenters would like questions along the way. Your choice.
I think either is fine. You know, we seem to be a smaller group tonight. So if you'd like to ask questions as we move through, I think that's fine.
Okay, thank you very kindly.
Hannah, I might share, just because just so you know, when you were sharing, we could see sort of the speaker notes, so it was a bit distracting. So I think I'll share, just so that it's just the kind of the plain version. Can everyone just confirm that everyone can see that there? Yeah, okay, very good. So for the natural environment, there'll be a couple of things we'll be looking at. Firstly, from a policy standpoint, I would say that the natural environment policies in North Huron are working quite well. Though we do want to make sure we're updating any any language in regards to perhaps updated flood mapping from partners at MBCA, any reference maybe to things like climate adaptation, that sort of thing. So we will be looking at the policies and making sure that definitions and that sort of thing are up to date. The other thing that we'll be doing is looking to update the mapping or the designations to reflect that most recent information. And so Hannah and I have prepared a few slides for Council's review, specifically about the natural environment changes. And I think that this has been a point of discussion. We're just actually in sort of the final stages of the ACW official plan update. And what we've seen in the updates to their designation mapping is that the current mapping as it stands is a bit outdated, quite frankly. And so there was a number of properties where areas that were actually, plain agricultural fields were designated natural environment. And conversely, there are areas that were full forests that weren't designated natural environment. And so our approach to that plan update, and similarly our approach to the North Huron official plan update, would be to ensure that the mapping accurately reflects the features that exist on the landscape. And so really it's about a corrections exercise. It's not about looking for areas that we would like to be natural environment. It's strictly looking at the areas on the landscape that are natural environment and should be protected as such. Also to make sure that we don't have areas designated natural environment when there are no features there, because that certainly can cause issues. So I'm just going to leave this slide for a minute and go over to a separate presentation that we have. Again, Hannah, can you just give me a confirmation that you're looking at these slides? Yes. Wonderful. Yep. Okay, thank you. So we're in the northwest corner of East Wawanach here, and what you'll see at the top of the screen is the current official plan natural environment designation. So you see it's sort of a long green finger in this area. But what you note when you actually kind of look through the designations, this is sort of a hatching. If you go to the one below, you can actually see that there's swaths of this land on which there are no natural features. And so what the analysis on the bottom slide shows is the areas that are hatched with the black. So in this area here, and then again in the middle, again actually all the way further over, they would all be what we call sent back to an agriculture designation. So we'd be changing this from natural environment to agriculture. Now this area here is a natural feature, so it would stay natural environment. But that's the kind of update council can expect to see. Here's another example. Again, if you see on the left, there's a whole section here which is currently designated natural environment, but in fact should be agriculture. So you see there's also another one. There's some additions as well, so I want council to see that. This is one I've actually had very detailed conversations with this farmer. Some people might recognize where this is, but this was a farm. It's on a section of significant waterway, and so what happened on this farm and other farms that border riparian areas was that there was a layer from the Conservation Authority known as the River Valley layer, and that layer was mistakenly used to designate properties in North Huron. So what you see, this person, it's almost an entire farm field designated natural environment, and it shouldn't be. If that farmer, and then what we've done is that we've used this mapping to inform the zoning bylaw, which means that this person's property is actually zoned natural environment. So if today that farmer wanted to come in, get a building permit for a shed or for a barn, they wouldn't be able to get one. And that is a problem that I see when I review the mapping. So this needs to be done in my mind. There are areas that will be added, absolutely. So if we look over on the far right-hand side of this screen, what you're going to see is an area that's hatched in a light green. That's an area that's proposed to be added to natural environment. And when we look at the first slide, we see, yeah, you know, there is a natural area there that's just sort of an extension of this other piece. And so this would be proposed to be added. All of the areas in black in this case would be deleted. Here's an example of a more substantial addition. So you'll see in the top, this is the current natural environment designation. And there's an entire woodlot here. And if I had to eyeball that, I'd say it's about 10 acres. And it's not designated today. So that would be a larger piece that we would be looking to designate natural environment as part of this update to the mapping. And then we do like a series of corrections around the edges, right? So, I mean, this obviously isn't correct. This could be brought into a little bit more accuracy. So we just kind of try to work around the edges. Where there are really, really minor changes, keep in mind that the planners are certainly able to do interpretation. So these maps are passed at such a scale that, you know, if Hannah and I were working with a farmer and, you know, we'd go out to and, you know, there was some kind of discrepancy, we can do that interpretation. Different than at a zoning level. Once it's incorporated into the zoning, it becomes applicable law for a building permit, and there really is no opportunity for interpretation. So that's why it's critical that the official plan mapping is correct, because it forms the basis for the zone maps. Just to kind of see how this would all follow through. Here's another one. As you can see on the landscape, this was designated natural environment. This piece was designated natural environment. This one, for whatever reason, wasn't. And so that's one that we would say, you know, consistent with how other features are being treated, we would suggest that that one should be as well. So I'll leave it there. And maybe, I don't know if this might be a good time if I stop sharing for a second. Are there any questions about that particular update as I've described it? Yes.
Anita, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Reeve Bailey. Denise, there is a map at the end of our North Huron official plan, and it's speaking about untreated non-prime agricultural land. And furtherwards in the plan, there's a talk about that untreated non-prime agricultural land is proposed for reforestation and stuff like that. Are you going to look at that as well? Because I think in the years since that map was drawn, there is a lot of improvement going on, like soil improvement and drainage and stuff like that, to like almost half or a third of our municipality is that kind of land.
Yeah, I would completely agree with your comments that the trends that we've seen in agriculture over the past 10 years are such that those lands which, you know, may be considered non-prime have been substantially improved through, as you've said, drainage, you know, different techniques. I think when it comes to reforestation in the county of Huron, we really worked more so with landowners who are interested in doing stewardship projects, and we have a really strong tradition of stewardship in the county. The Clean Water Project, County Council actually recently suggested that they were going to increase the amount. So it would actually be $500,000 each year that would go to clean water and stewardship initiatives across the county. So I think, I mean, our approach is really to reforestation is more about working with farmers who are interested and in providing them incentives. It's by no means a requirement that anyone reforest.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. Through you to Denise. Yeah, this concerns me. I know you said that you're not looking for new natural areas, but I know that will happen. It can't be helped. So this is a question, and then I have more comments, Reeve, if you don't mind. So the question is, how often will these maps be updated?
So the mapping is updated during this review, and then in another, 5 years' time, we would do another review.
Okay.
An update.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the concern I have is that since the previous maps, I guess, I'm concerned about the canopies of woodlands being enlarged, obviously, and tree lines along fence lines, fence bottoms. And there's a huge concern as at what point does, for those ones, for something new, when does it turn from insignificant to significant?
Yeah.
I guess that's a question. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Sorry, through Reed Bailey to Councillor Palmer. So it has not been our practice to designate hedgerows. Furthermore, we really recognize that there is a symbiotic relationship between agriculture and the natural environment. And the example I'll use is a meadow. So a meadow is biologically a natural area, and yet we know that many meadows in the county are used as pasture land. And that works fine. The meadow provides the habitat and food source for cattle, let's say. At the same time, there's probably other critters and wildlife that also inhabit that meadow, and it works. They're there at the same time. Those areas are not designated natural environment. They are left as agriculture. So I guess I want to respond to your first comment in that, you know, it will naturally happen that we will pick up more areas than we're supposed to. The difference I would say in this review as compared to any review in the past is that our tools are simply better in terms of the GIS analysis that's happening by planning staff. Hannah and I are very involved in how that analysis is done. We've actually gone lot by lot and will through the review process if council directs us to make sure that that analysis is as accurate as possible. And then I guess in terms of when does something become significant, I think there's lots of different criteria when you think about natural environment areas. So size is certainly one, the orientation of it. So is it a round size or shape, for example, that would have interior forest habitat, or is it a long linear piece that perhaps wouldn't provide as much protection? How does it relate with other features on the landscape? Is it isolated out, or is it integrated with maybe a riparian area and another natural feature? So I think that when we think about the technical document that's behind the natural environment update for Heron County, it was done by biologists, and it's a technical model that they ran to show about significance on the landscape. What that model showed is that because in Heron County, in many areas of Heron County, we have a very low coverage of trees. We have low coverage generally, more so in the south part of the county than the north, but still proportionately we have low coverage. And so therefore it demonstrated that many of the patches, while they might not be that big, they are still significant and worthy of protection. I would also say that under the provincial policy statement, you know, certainly provincially significant wetlands, coastal wetlands, areas of natural and scientific interest are treated a little bit differently, but pretty much all the other natural environment areas are treated the same. If you want to do development in them or near them, you need to do what's called an environmental impact study. So the significance piece doesn't really make that much of a difference in terms of a policy implementation.
Denise?
I have follow-up unless someone else wants to speak.
No, go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Rafe. You were alluding to we don't have that much tree cover. East Wallnash, the ward has 22.7 or something percent. But what is concerning is that natural heritage plan is embedded in this mapping, and it's trying to get into our official plan. And actually I saw some points of it already there, and I don't know how it got there so soon. But anyways, a very tough part is they want 30% coverage. They have to have 30% coverage. Well, we got 22.7. What do we got? 20 in the county, 20%. So what's going to happen? Like, holy smokes, are we as farmers going to be told, okay, this is what your farm has. And if you need 10% more, you're going to take it out of good production land and place it. And yeah, you can say, oh, it'll take it out of poor land. No, that's farmed as well. It has a value. So that is a huge thing that a lot of folks don't know about, is that 30% factor. And yeah, and then the other point is the buffer that's required that you need to, well, I'll talk about it. When around a woodlot, it's 50 meters. That's what, 165 feet. That's a buffer. 400 feet away from wetlands, that's a buffer. That's land that the farmer loses control of. Serious. This is serious. Now you can plant your crop. You can't build anything on it. And I see someday, because of policies, that's what you're after, policies to recognize stewardship, someday someone could say, I think farmers should grow grass because maybe that's more environmental and the habitat, the animals would love it.
Councillor Palmer?
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. We're going to deal with what we're doing today, and what they do 20 or 200 years from now is up to somebody else. But so we just want to stick with our policies based on the past and where the next 5 years are going to go. Having said that, the reason I interrupted is I wondered if, Denise, did you want to pick up on some of the answers before it becomes so many questions?
Yeah, I would like to. I don't think that when we speak about adjacent lands, that is an area in which building activities, if you'd like to build in that area, that yes, there would be some evaluation required. In some cases, it's an environmental impact study. In other cases, it can be a much more of a scoped process wherein, let's say the proposed building was I'm going to say a shelter, a shade shelter for cattle. That certainly would not require an environmental impact statement. In our study, in likelihood, it would just be the planner, the chief building official, and potentially the county biologist coming out, taking a look and saying, yeah, stay back X number of feet from the drip line. So I guess I'm a little concerned with that suggestion. There would never be anything in the policies that prohibits agriculture from continuing. That's actually a policy right from the provincial policy statement. We have that direction. So if we were to write a policy as indicated, it would be in contravention of provincial policy. So we would never write something of that nature. The agricultural use of the landscape is a huge economic and social driver. It is absolutely something that we as planners are protective of. So it's not, I guess I'm concerned that there's a suggestion that we would want to undermine the agricultural industry in the county.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer, I know how passionate you are about this. If you have further questions, it's fine. But we'll just keep it on the subject.
Please let someone else ask. And
Deputy Recite. Yeah, thank you, Chris. Deputy Recite.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. I guess my question ultimately is this review, anything that we want to change a designation is public knowledge. Like, we're not doing this without somebody knowing what their lands are going to be changed to. And if they have a concern, as Councillor Palmer's has indicated about some of his concerns about the overall North Huron lands, those residents or those occupiers of that land have every opportunity to provide their feedback to both not only Huron County Planning, but us, to ultimately decide whether it's in the right framework of the province's provincial statement and our needs, to ensure that it is properly regarded as natural environment, agriculture, whatever the case may be. I think ultimately you want the mapping to be correct. As a comment, in the sense that a prime example is the comment that Denise said, like, if that mapping was mapped natural environment when it wasn't, that's going to be a cost to that person a lot larger than what it would be if it was just mapped properly. Because now he's got to do zoning bylaw amendments, he's got to do a whole bunch of other things to even potentially even be able to produce anything, if not even that. So I think we want to ensure that we have the accurate assessment of the property, but in no way, shape, or form are we the gods to developing what this is. Like, I mean, they're going to have the ability to suggest, yeah, I think that's right, or no, I don't think that's right, and at least we should all have those comments to ensure that we're making the right decision as a county and as a municipality when this engagement is done. So that's my comments. I appreciate Denise, your and Hannah's support on that, because I mean, this information that we get from landowners is going to be vital as to knowing these concerns and these issues about changing. But I think we have to recognize we want to make sure it's correct. If we don't make it not correct, then what's the point of doing the review?
Thank you very much, Deputy Reeve. Anyone else like to speak to this? Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Rafe. I'm just concerned that not enough farmers know about this, know about the positives. Like, I agree, there's some positives, but they don't know what the natural heritage plan, I know you call it something else now, what it really entails. They just don't know the consequences. And I wish there was more. We can talk about it when we start having open houses here, and it certainly will. I just hope enough producers come out. Complacency is everyone's enemy. So that's my point here, is that I don't think the education is there. I didn't know about it till I started researching it. I'm just a normal guy. So, and I know I've mentioned it to other people, and they say, what? And then you try and educate them, So that's what I feel. I know, Denise, you've done a stellar job of moving this through at the county level and educating there. But I'm just concerned right down where the rubber hits the road, those folks, the grassroots. I just don't think.
Thank you very much. This has been going on for quite some time. This is not the first time, so farmers should have known about this, just like as if you own a house, you should know what's going on around your house. There will be more debate. Councillor Palmer, if you know of people that don't know about it or are concerned about it, have them get in touch with Denise. That would be really nice of you to do that, or Denise, whoever you specify them to talk to. Definitely want their input before and not after. But remember, none of this is written in stone. I'm going to talk about that a little later in the program. But Chris, be assured that these young ladies know exactly what they're talking about. This is not the first time on the merry-go-round, and everybody will be reached out to as best as possible. Councillor Heffer, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Reeve. Yes, I noticed in the Huron County plan, Denise, that it says, or Hannah, that there's 8 helps to the agriculture to keep for the best of agriculture there. And so we can be ensured that anything that we do in this, whatever we come up with, those 8 helps are still going to be there to utilize agriculture. I forget what page it was on there, but it was very substantial, the things that you're going to help. Like, it won't diminish any of those thoughts.
Yes, I'd like to refer to the exact section. So I'm just, if you can bear with me, perhaps one of Hannah or I could pull that up, but absolutely. So a local official plan needs to conform to the direction provided in the upper tier plan, or the county plan in this case. So yes, that direction that's provided in the county plan carries through. So we'll make sure that I'm just flipping over to the agriculture section and seeing which, sorry, you called it 8.
I think there's eight points that it talked about.
Okay. Specific to agriculture.
Yes, that part. Sorry, I didn't mark down the page.
No, that's okay. We will locate it, and yes, I'll make a point of, I'm just looking at the general policy section for agriculture, and yeah. We will locate that, Councillor Heffer, and yes, ensure. And we can actually bring back, one idea might be to have a workshop with council once we have the draft prepared, the first draft. And so that would be an opportunity for us to look at it just that much more finer detail at what some of the amendments would be. And then I'll certainly make a point of including a slide about conformity with the county OP's agricultural policies.
Thank you.
Deputy Recycling.
Sorry, I was going to, I forgot this question, Denise and Hannah. So I'm sure you are aware of the challenges North Huron had probably 6 or 7 years ago as it relates to how the official plan was read and conformed to certain guidelines regards to use of or how many livestock on a farm and those types of things. Is this type of thing going to be, I mean, I'm assuming those changes, those aspects of the official plan are going to be updated to ensure that the lower tier, or us, North Huron, is not going to have these issues again as it relates to conforming with nutrient management stuff and all that other legalese that needs to be ensured that we're following as it relates to that.
Yes, it will be updated. It's more specific to the zoning bylaw than the official plan, but we actually would like to update both of these documents sort of one directly after the other so that the direction from the OP comes into full force and effect within the zoning bylaw shortly thereafter. And yes, that AG4 issue will be addressed.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
I'm not seeing any more hands, and if I'm missing somebody, please speak up, but I believe everybody is on my screen. If you want to continue, Denise, please.
Okay. Good. So perhaps Hannah, would you like me to share? Is that easier?
Yes, that works. Thanks, Denise.
Okay, wonderful.
All right, thank you, Denise. So just moving along, in terms of our other revisions, there is a section in the current official plan that just speaks to urban settlement areas. So in terms of what our focus for these areas will be is, firstly, we would like to calculate a land availability for different land uses. So this would include industrial land, commercial, as well as residential, and just assessing if the current designated lands currently meet the future or current and anticipated needs of the community with respect to, again, industrial, commercial, and residential. So that will be something that we will look at, and if it is found that additional land is needed, that would be something we would assess through the designations, so the mapping. We will also review policies that speak to the allocation of development and growth to primary settlement areas that have servicing available. We will also look to provide policy that speaks specifically to residential intensification and infilling, and strengthening some of the policies around providing affordable housing targets, and specifically encouraging a mix of different housing forms to meet demand. And specifically with that, as was previously discussed during the housing friendly review, we will be looking at possible policies for additional dwelling units, just to provide for some additional options for residential infilling. Denise, if you don't mind, just moving to the next slide. So in terms
of, could I just question you on something there, because I'm not sure if this is the right time to do it. I'm going back to the days when I was on council before and on this issue. If I recall, what happened in days before is we have had very little to no development, whether it be land or whether it be housing or commercial or industrial. So to base our future on our past, I think would be a mistake. And I'm going to bring two things forward, and I'm not sure if you guys are aware, so bear with me while I go through this for a few minutes. So when it comes to residential, we have been very limited on the amount of land we have. And the amount of in the past, a lot of the land we had was tied up. Therefore, as we know, there's a 400 house development here in town that may never happen. This council had the initiative and wisdom to spring off in different directions. So for instance, the Hutton Heights we're building on in Blythe, you see more building in Blythe. So when we calculate our residential, we have to be careful because If I'm understanding properly and I'm watching the world around me, even at Hutton Heights, I'm expecting to have that built in 4 years, believe it or not. And I'm not going by Bernie Bailey dreaming. I'm going by the people that are asking to buy the land and how long it's going to take them and the agreements we can make. So I want to be very careful that we don't crowd ourselves in. The second one, and a very, very important one in my world, is the industrial land. Now, it can be said that we have had no industrial growth in 50 years, 100 years, because the industrial growth has been outside of North Huron. It has not been inside of North Huron, but it could not happen. It could not happen without the facilities of North Huron. If everybody's watching very carefully, you will notice in Blythe, we did not continue to run the pipe into Central Huron because they're collecting the taxes on the building while we're paying people to fix the water lines and et cetera, et cetera. We turned that pipe north. It is now running into East Wawanosh. We plan on developing East Wawanosh, which will reduce or help the taxes of North Huron. If you look at the north end, you will notice that we did not continue to run the pipe, or have no, at least I personally have no interest in running pipe into Morris Turnberry, because again, we paid for millions of dollars worth of infrastructure to get it to the edge of the land where they can use it, and they collect all the taxes. They don't share anything. So just take, for example, the arenas. We know now it's $240,000 a year that North Huron residents pay for Morris Turnberry to use our facility. I want to stay off that one. What I want to point out is we no longer run the line north to somebody else's community. We again turn that line, and we are now going south to Hutton Heights. And we have thousands of acres of land in East Wawanosh, and we need to develop on that. So I just want to point out, as we're working our way through this, I don't want to use days gone past of what we did because we couldn't do nothing because we were always told we were boxed in. Always told we were boxed in. So we have only one factory in our town. There might be 20 around us, but they wouldn't be there without us, and our neighbors don't want to share the profits of that. So we have this sitting council has changed the pipes. So when we talk about that kind of thing, I'm very interested in industrial land and more residential. We will fill it. We're not going to be a one-horse show. We're going to run off in different directions till it comes through. So if you just don't mind, and Deputy Reeve Syke would like to speak.
Sorry, I just want to reiterate too. I got a comment about the Reeve and what you have indicated, Reeve. So part of the concerning is the properties that are currently not zoned industrial. If a person wants to potentially change the zoning, if North Huron doesn't own it, we can't change it. I mean, unless there's a direction that says that it should be zoned industrial. I mean, arguably, if somebody else owns the land and doesn't want it to be zoned industrial, we're going to have to convince them to change it to industrial in order to potentially develop industrial land there. I mean, one of the things we have to recognize is we as North Huron don't own every piece of property. So, I mean, as this official plan comes out, these individuals are going to want to make sure they're zoned a certain way because that's what they want, how it's zoned for their future development or their future use potentially later on. The concern I have is we have to understand that rationale. And, I understand we want more industrial land or we want more residential land. I think the biggest concern from what I've gathered, in the past is, this calculation of available land uses is if we have residential land and one is designed as being residential, the concern was always that you couldn't develop more residential if that was already on the market as residential. But if the municipality cannot create the residences on that land, it negatively influences what the municipality can develop. And I think that's the biggest issue that we want to address, that if it says a municipality can only have 30% of their residential, zoned residential, and you can't get any more residential until that's all developed, that's a bigger risk if it's not in the municipality's hands, because we can't develop the land if it's not owned by us. And that's what we run into when it came to, and I'm looking at Denise because it looks like she wants to comment, but I think that's the issue that we ran into with the A2A development, is we were concerned it was going to impact our Hutton Heights because that was already designated as residential. And we were afraid that we were going to get some issue that they wouldn't let us develop something else because that's a big piece of residential land that we're not able to develop.
Denise, just before I hand it back to you, I'll end with this. It has taken us 3 years, and it'll go into 4 years to develop Hutton Heights. 4 years people have been waiting for houses. We have worries about factories leaving. We're like everybody else. We don't have enough employees. We have no place to put the employees. My concern is also on the industrial side, thinking 20 years out. We need to be able to say we need 500 acres of industrial land because that's what it's going, or put 500 acres aside. I'm not asking where, I'm not suggesting I know where. All I'm saying is if I was building a company, I know I need this and this year and this next year, and I'm going to get to my goal down here. All I'm suggesting is let's not wait till industrial comes along and then take 3 to 4 years to get the land zoned. If we can just at least start the process and then work on the other. Okay, sorry, I won't beleaguer that. I'll hand it back over to you girls. Sorry.
Okay, before Hannah carries on there, I just a couple of things were coming to mind. So in 2015, the county hired Watson and Associates to do an industrial land strategy across the county and looking at where do we need to have additional lands designated for industrial purposes. Now that study is a bit dated now, it was 2015, but I can certainly tell you that we utilized that study when we were doing for example, the Blue Water official plan review in 2018. We chose to designate an additional 100 acres at the north end of the Hensel settlement area adjacent to the Hensel District Co-op property. And we certainly engaged with that landowner. You know, that property was identified as the prime location for industrial expansion. We sent them letters. We called them, we talked through the fact that no, they could continue farming that property should that be their wish, but that for the long term, we would like to see it designated industrial. And at some point in the future, that may happen. But in the meantime, they could absolutely, continue farming it until their family, chose otherwise. And so that person was agreeable and that happened. So that's how those conversations often come about, is that when we do that analysis, when we understand the priorities of council, we're trying to make alignment between your economic and strategic priorities and the land use policies, guided obviously by provincial frameworks. And so when we can identify local opportunities, Hannah and I will be speaking with landowners and businesses as well, and having that opportunity to say, might you consider, right, this, or would you be open to discussing a change here? And those types of things will happen throughout this process. Anyone that has a land use change proposed on their property, my recommendation is that we send a direct letter with a map to that individual. That's what we did for the Howick OP 5-year review. We've just completed it for the ACW OP 5-year review. It's a lot. It's a lot of staff resources. But it is the right way to go, and we've been very pleased with the outcome in both cases.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Kevin. Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve, to Denise. On the maps around settlements of Wingham and around Blythe, there's land designated as future development, I believe.
Okay.
Who? Like this is going towards Councillor Sipes' comment about if we don't own the land, how we can't change the designation of it. How does the future use get put onto land that we don't own around our town?
Okay, so let's pull up a map maybe and give an example there. We have a map just in a few slides, so I'm just going to jump ahead to that and we can have a bit of that conversation. Okay, so I'm going to use Blythe. Okay, so if I'm going to use Blythe as the example, I'm going to use this parcel at the northwest corner that's designated, that's yellow. So this property is designated residential, and in the zoning bylaw, this is zoned future development. So basically the council has, through the official plan, has designated that the future use of this parcel is going to be residential. It's then up to the property owner, that land's being farmed today. They may want to continue farming it, or they might decide, they're now at a point where they'd like to sell it to a residential developer. That developer is then the person who applies for a zone change from future development to, let's say, an R2 zone, a medium density residential, to facilitate a residential plan of subdivision on that land. So in some areas, there is suggestion of doing pre-zoning, which is where you would go in and you would do pre-zoning as opposed to leaving something in future development. In some ways, it could be successful. It's more difficult to be successful on a really broad property where we can identify a smaller intensification properties. That's where pre-zoning can be more effective. And we can certainly talk about that once we get to the zone stage. Does that answer your question?
Well, I just wonder, was that the municipality that designated that as residential?
So this was designated, these are the designations that exist, and this was done, yes, this is what's in your current official plan.
So can we add to that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we
but
could do an expansion to the settlement area. So let's say, for example, the piece next to it, the piece in white. Yes. Let's say we wanted to do a settlement area expansion down North Street, and we wanted to bring on more land for residential purposes. That's where we would send that landowner a letter and say the council is considering, given the residential demand in Blythe, we would like to designate more of your lands residential. Or how do you feel about that? Are you willing to accept a change in designation? And they would absolutely have a right, as Deputy Mayor Seep indicated earlier, to come out to let us know, does this work with their intentions and their choices for their own property, and we will work with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So Denise, if I can just ask a question, this would be the time to make that decision. That's what tonight is all about. Do we want to add residential, or that's at a future date?
So that's at a future date. So allow Hannah and I the opportunity to complete the analysis that Hannah alluded to. So calculating land availability, and then we'll bring back that analysis for council and make a recommendation to you based on the number. Do we believe a settlement area expansion is necessary? If so, how many acres? And where would we identify prime sites? And then council would have the opportunity to direct from there.
Thank you very much. I'll hand it back over to you girls now.
Okay. So I think Hannah had just finished talking about encouraging a mix of housing forms to meet demand and additional dwelling units. And I was just going to go to the next slide for her.
All right, thank you, Denise. So just going back to the conversation about residential intensification. So updating the official plan policies is one tool that we have to help facilitate this. And as of current, we do have additional guidelines that are tools that we can use to further encourage residential intensification. So council may be familiar, the county has a guideline for residential intensification. And this document provides guidelines and best practices for how to do residential intensification well in terms of design. So that's one tool that we see hopefully allowing for more of gentle integration of infill development into established residential neighborhoods. So that's one tool that we have. The other tool that we see assisting with the policy specific for additional residential units is the county also has a guideline for this that came out last year that just provides. It's primarily directed to homeowners that might be looking to do additional residential units, and it just provides them some guidance on some key things to consider. And one of those being referring to your local official plan policies and zoning bylaw. So that would be another tool that we would have to help facilitate gentle residential intensification and infilling.
Great. Thanks, Hannah. So this next one I'm going to speak to, which is about natural hazard mapping updates. So the MBCA has done some additional work specifically around Wingham in regards to floodplain mapping and trying to, again, make the mapping more accurate. And so we would like to see that new updated work integrated into the official plan. Rather than changing designations, my recommendation is that council consider integrating this mapping as an overlay. And basically what this means is that should there be any shift in those maps, no member of the public would be required to get an official plan amendment. But rather, the integration of the floodplain mapping, the purpose of it is really to enhance public understanding of where there might be constraints for development. So there are lands that are susceptible to flooding, for example, in the urban area that might not be an area where building is possible. And so we want to be transparent about that. And so we integrate that mapping within the OP and the zoning bylaw. At the end of the day, though, we leave those calls really up to our partners at Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. They work with landowners. They give the permits that are required for development in hazard areas. So for our purposes, it's really more about public transparency and awareness, as opposed to, you know, added regulation or anything of that nature. And finally, one thing we would look at is encouraging the development of active transportation infrastructure. You know, North Huron is very blessed with the G2G trail, which has seen an incredible kind of makeover or overhaul and a lot of usage. We've actually been contacted by the G2G trail letting us know that they would like to participate in this process. So that's really great. And I'm sure there are other opportunities for active transportation infrastructure within North Huron as well. So we want to talk a little bit about when we're doing the land analysis, what would we be looking at? And so if we think of Blythe in 2015, I mean, a lot has happened in the last, you know, sort of 5 to 7 years. If we think back to 2015, you know, Cowbell was not yet located at the corner of County Road 25 and Highway 4. As well, the Tim Hortons development has happened since that time. We have seen the complete redevelopment of the former Blythe Public School property, which is now home to many residents and really does look quite beautiful. I was down there just the other day. And at the north end, we've seen the development of the Rutledge Plan of Subdivision. We've also seen the new North Huron Public Works facility, fire hall there at the north end. So a lot of changes for Blythe in 5 years. And so we want to think about, okay, as we move forward, what are the priorities for Blythe and where do we need to look at, for example, where the settlement area designations are or are not set up to meet the community's needs and priorities. And so that's sort of some of the analysis is we want to think about some of the recent changes and trends when we're undertaking this work. Similarly for Wingham, I mean, the corner of Highway 4 and 86 has seen a lot of change there as well. A number of gas station developments that were done during Laura's time as planner, as well as the McDonald's and that plaza there. So we want to be giving some thought, particularly to your highway commercial policies in around Wingham to see if there's any changes that will help to ensure that there's future opportunities there.
Denise, could I just speak to that? Could I just speak to that for a second too?
Absolutely.
So on the corner in Wingham where we have the bottom left-hand corner, we all know it is, we call it the floodplain, of course. And it is in the bottom left-hand corner there. It's, I believe, controlled by Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. With the growth on the edge of many small towns around us, we see where the Walmarts and the Sobeys want to go. And I would suggest even by the look of the gas stations and different ones that have popped up in our little town, on the far left bottom corner there, is any of that floodplain available for highway commercial? Having said that, I do understand it would take a lot of fill, et cetera, but I'm not interested in that. I'm just interested in, could that be designated as highway commercial for, say, a new superstore?
I would have to do some looking into this sort of the development constraints on that property, but we could certainly look at that.
I would appreciate it. That's one of my long-term goals.
So before I leave the map of Blythe here, I would like to talk a little bit about the areas that are currently designated. Certainly Hannah and I will be looking at areas that are set up for residential development specifically and wanting to get a sense of whether or not we have enough lands within the Blythe ward to accommodate for future residential growth. And this may be an area where a settlement area expansion is as necessary. There's a couple other areas that I think we'll be bringing back for discussion with council. For example, this property here is one that's just, this is sort of the combined arena recreational property. The Threshers property is here. The new Blythe Theater, outdoor theater, is right in this corner. And then there's an extension of the community facility designation onto the next farm. It's an interesting designation in that it actually has no road frontage. You'd have to go through the agricultural area in order to reach it. So that's one that I think we'll revisit as a group and discuss. Maybe there's some options there that might make this a little more development ready than as it sits today. Again, this is the Schedule B. So just to remind council, when we come back with a series of amendments, we will be breaking this down. At the end of the day, the product will look something like this, but we will certainly be breaking it down more into kind of a concession by concession. So it's a little easier for council to understand the changes that are being proposed.
All right. Thanks, Denise. I'll just continue along with our presentation. So the current official plan also does have community-wide policies that would be applicable community-wide. So we would also want to review those just to ensure that they are up to date. That would include just ensuring that our source water protection policies are up to date. So we will certainly consult with the local source water protection officers on those. In terms of accessibility and universal design, just ensuring that we have the proper policy direction that speaks to minimizing accessibility barriers and ensure this is reflecting the latest accessibility guidelines. We also want to provide for ensure that accessibility is one of those considerations that would be integrated into site plan control. There are current policies that speak to cultural heritage and community improvement processes. So we would also want to review those just to ensure that they reflect the current current and potential future situation in North Huron. So I will note, for example, North Huron did adopt a community improvement plan in 2018. So we would also want to ensure that that's reflected in the and referenced in the official plan. And as well, there are economic development policies, and we would want to ensure that these are also up to date and reflective of any local initiatives. And then just broadly, possible inclusion of policies to address climate change adaptation as well as mitigation. So encouraging walkable communities, providing opportunities for low impact design, and promoting energy conservation. So in terms of, there are designations for mineral aggregate resources in the current official plan. In terms of the updates for policies, we don't anticipate that there would be very many significant changes, but one of the changes that we anticipate is providing for aggregate recycling. So this was new direction brought out in the latest PPS that just speaks to providing for opportunities on site to allow for aggregate recycling. In terms of, we also have an official plan section that speaks to how to actually implement that. One of those tools for that is site plan control. So this is referenced quite heavily in the official plan. So we would just want to ensure that that's up to date with the local direction, as well as implementation, just reflecting requirements for duty to consult with Indigenous communities.
Reeve, it's Chris.
Yes, sorry, I don't, yeah, go ahead.
May I speak, please?
Yes, and then Anita wants to ask a question.
It's a question. Thank you, through you to Hannah. Just wondering, what's aggregate recycling?
Sure. So
Can you give me an example?
Sure, I can provide some details. So there is broad direction in the PPS that provides opportunities for mineral aggregate resource conservation, and one of those is recycling. So this would be the recycling of any byproducts from mineral aggregate production and just allowing that to be further processed on site.
Thank you very much. Anita, go ahead.
Well, I actually had the same question, but is that the recycling of products that from the gravel pits or from the salt mine? Or I'm still not sure what aggregate recycling is. It's not returning the gravel pit to nature or something like that. It's using more the byproducts of.
Yes, so it would be more focused on the recycling and the reuse of the byproducts of production. In terms of the rehabilitation of aggregate pits when they are no longer in operation, there is also policy direction for that. And that would be typically something that would be implemented separately as part of, if they had an aggregate pit license, they would be required to do rehabilitation as part of that.
So one example, and it's not something that we've necessarily seen in this area, but let's say, for example, there was a large demolition of a site that had a significant concrete. And there was the opportunity that concrete could be crushed and reused in a different application. This allows for that type of activity to occur on a property that's licensed under the Aggregate Resources Act. So it can't happen on any property. And there's certainly a lot of stipulations in regards to making sure no hazardous materials are being transported. So there's a lot of kind of ins and outs of it. It's not something I can say that I'm familiar with happening in our area, but perhaps closer to urban centers, that may be something that becomes more prevalent. Is the cost of aggregate is just, it's going up, as is most other things.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Falconer, go ahead.
Thank you. Partially answered there. I was just curious as to whether that would allow, as you said, contaminated gravel from sites that need to be fixed up because they've had, whether they've got too much salt in the soil or whether they've got engine oil in the soil. Well, that would lead to them
a lot of rules around that. Certainly, even in Goderich, because of asbestos, a lot of the demolished materials there had to go to hazardous landfill after the tornado. So yeah, no, it's something it's a heavily regulated type of thing, but it's possible. And I think that at the spirit of it under the ARA is to say that there is still value to those aggregates, and if they can be reused, that's something that they want to see facilitated. So
most gravel deposits, at least in Heron County, are right next to a very good trout stream or small creek or a small tributary that's used for spawning. And it's just the nature of the beast that's where the gravel deposits are, and so it's a very touchy subject around these parts. Thank you for answering my question.
Okay, Paul Heffer would like to ask a question. Go ahead, Councillor Heffer.
Through you, Reeve, to Denise or Hannah. I noticed you mentioned, alluded to the gravel pits when they make them into good land again. Will it be like number one, like agricultural land that will it be turned to, or would it be turning into trees, let's say, planting trees? I'm just wondering, how do you sign up the rehabilitating of it? Like who makes that decision?
So that's done as part of their license by the Ministry of Natural Resources, and they have to outline what their rehabilitation plan is. For new pits, the rehabilitation requirements are far more stringent than certainly any pits that were developed years ago. They might not necessarily even have a rehabilitation plan. Certainly where sites can be rehabilitated to agriculture, that is encouraged. In some cases, the state of the land is such that they're not able to return it to productive land, in which case we may see natural environments. And the final thing we sometimes see is extraction under the water table, in which case the resulting land parcel would in fact be a water body.
Thank you.
Looks like that's it for questions now. If you ladies would like to continue on.
Thanks. So just continuing along, just to reiterate our intended public consultation approach. So we do plan to hold open houses. Hopefully going into the spring, those will be able to be scheduled. In terms of the method of delivery for those, we certainly have a strong preference and will strive to provide those open houses in person, because we certainly do see the benefit of that. However, obviously, given the public health situation, we may not be able to guarantee that at this moment, but that will be something that we will continue to assess as we get closer to those potential open house dates. We will also have public meetings in the form of either regular council meetings or special council meetings. So a meeting such as this, in which members of the public are welcome to attend and speak. We will also be mindful of providing accommodations for individuals without digital access, and providing opportunities for in-person consultations. So in the next point there, we do plan to provide drop-in times or office hours where folks will be able to come speak to a planner in person if that is preferred. And this will specifically be key for the map changes. So as Denise mentioned before, it is recommended best practice that each landowner with a potential mapping or designation change receive a letter. And that will provide them, we will also be available for further discussions about those mapping changes. And if necessary, we will make ourselves available to do site visits, which might become important, particularly for the natural environment mapping, just to do some ground truthing of the analysis. We do plan to do meetings with key community groups. So we have had some correspondence with some key community groups. There has been an expression and interest of further consultation with the Huron Pioneer Threshers and Hobby Association, as well as the G2G Rail Trail Association. So we intend to specifically engage with them further, and then other community groups as they express interest. In terms of keeping folks informed, one of those primary methods which we propose is to provide updates on a project page on Huron County Connects. This, I can show council just a demo of what the website looks like as of today. Or Denise can. Thank you, Denise.
I've got it, no problem.
So this is what the current project page looks like today. And again, we will continue to provide updates as they are available. A key point on this is Denise and I have made our contact information available to those that have questions. And certainly members of the public are definitely encouraged to submit comments to either of us. And we will continue to provide updates primarily on this website.
Can I just reach out there and ask if you can piggyback that onto our North Huron site too? If our staff reaches out to you, could we have it on the North Huron site as we go along too, please?
Yes, definitely.
Yes, we were able to do sort of a mirror image of it with the ACW site. So I'm sure your website probably has similar technology. And so yes, we will make sure it's on North Huron as well. And certainly also would be great to promote it through any of the social media channels that North Huron has.
Thank you very kindly.
Hey, Reeve.
Yes. Go
Sorry,
ahead, Deputy Reeve.
Yeah, my battery's dying here, so I just turned my video off. So sorry. Just so I want to recognize, though, doing what the planners are expected to do is sending these informations out to landowners that are looking at change. I think that's a great idea. I mean, I think we have to recognize, though, is that there is some the owners of those properties and the people in our municipality need to take some ownership in getting information as well. Like, I mean, this isn't going. This is a 5-year review, not going to be done for 5 years. So, I mean, we have to recognize that, and we have to continue to move this forward. I anticipate. My follow-up question was Denise and Hannah. When we send these notices to landowners, is it with an expectation that they acknowledge receipt or some conversation, or is it we've sent them out, that's kind of our consultation process, and if we don't hear anything, we assume everything's good? What process are we doing?
So there would be a letter accompanying the map. And so the letter would outline, this is what an official plan is. We are doing a 5-year review. This is the purpose of it. In this case, in regards to your property, this is the proposed change. should you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please contact either Denise or Hannah. We will also be having open house times where you can drop in or schedule a time to meet with us. But yes, should we not hear from you, the sense would be that yes, you have no concerns. So that is sort of how it goes. And many people would call in simply for clarification. The way we did it with the Howick official plan, most recently in 2018, we set up actually an entire week where we were at the local office. In the mornings, it was scheduled times, and in the afternoon and evening, it was drop-in. We had an evening time, as I said, we had a Saturday morning. So we really tried to be available for people in sort of one sort of set, in that case, it was one set week. And that seemed to work well in that it sort of got people out, and they thought, okay, this is my week to go talk to the planner. I'm going to take my map and I'm going to go and find them. So it worked very well.
Appreciate everything. Thank you.
I can't see anybody, so just shout out if you want to ask a question. But I believe, Denise, we can hand it back over to you and Hannah.
Thank you, Reeve. So just moving along. So this slide here just provides a proposed time frame of the key milestones. This is similar to what was proposed in the initial initiation report last month. It's important to note there may need to be some flexibility built into this process depending on how consultation goes and the direction from council. But in terms of next steps for us, our next step for staff that we're seeking direction for right now is just providing direction to begin actually drafting the amendment specifically. And with that, providing direction to consider any community requests for suggested policy or mapping changes at this time, with the understanding that this will certainly help us inform the first draft of the proposed amendment, but it is anticipated as per the timeline that as we have further public consultation, that amendment will further be revised.
So Hannah, if I can just ask you on this, I don't see anywhere where it says, but I'm going to presume you will, the conversation that you've had with councillors tonight on changes.
Correct. Yes. So the feedback that we heard tonight as part of this public meeting would also be what we would consider moving forward as well.
Yeah.
Sure,
And we have our staff on here, so you don't have to get back directly to us. I do not believe, unless somebody wants you to. But our staff have heard what we want, what the council is looking for too. I believe I heard somebody out there.
Yes, Kevin, Councillor Kevin.
Go ahead, Kev.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. I was just noticing on your progression agenda there that you have the finals going back for ratification through Heron County in September, October there. Being an election year, you could have brand new councillors that have never seen this process, or a new council coming in that has not seen this process, and we'll have that at at their first consideration once the new councils come in. I just wonder if the 5-year policy would have been better served if it was done midterm, and not on an election year.
Happy to respond to that. So with 9 local municipalities across the county, we do strive to do at least 1, if not 2 each year, so that we can keep up with this 5-year review. As you'll note, we haven't done one for North Huron in approximately 8 years, I think it's been. So we have a hard time keeping up with it. The county has actually been able to increase staff, and specifically staff dedicated to policy updates to try to address this dynamic. And so if we were to avoid an election year, it would make it that much more difficult. The other thing I would say is that typically a 5-year review is not a particularly contentious item. We are mindful that if we were to get very close to the election, my hope would certainly be that we could take it forward in September. If not, it would be early October prior to the election. I do think it's fair, your point, Councillor Big Party, though, that I wouldn't take it to them, or sorry, Councillor Falconer, that I wouldn't take it to them at their first session. I agree, that would be unfair.
So it must have been my misunderstanding that I thought this was a Huron County-wide review, that you're doing the same review with everyone. But what you're saying is that it's stepped, it's just different municipalities at different times?
That's right. Yeah. So we did a full county official plan review, and that happened. We received, it was the bulk of the work was actually done in 2019 and into 2020, I guess. It's hard to remember years and which year was which the last couple of years. It was into 2020. And so that was ratified by the province. We are currently just finishing up ACW, starting North Huron, and we have intentions to engage with other communities as well. Trying, because we're recognizing that with the rate of change happening across our communities, particularly in regards to residential development, the policy framework needs to keep up. And so that's why I would submit that I do think this is an appropriate year to undertake this work, but certainly take your comment well that if we get too close to the election, we may have to revisit this timeline.
Yes, and with North Huron having boundaries with other municipalities, of possibly, if those other municipalities were looking at their planning at the same time we were, it might facilitate some conversation as to, other land uses and how, it must, like we say, we're landlocked, and we very nicely to have a great relationship with their neighbors and be able to prosper and to expand it at will, but that doesn't come to fruition very often. So if we change something, it might change. If they change something, it might change our ability to do things as well. So thank you. It's just a comment.
And any neighboring municipality would certainly be circulated on your draft amendment, so they'll know that you're undertaking this work, and they would also, as a neighboring municipality, have the opportunity to submit comments on the proposed amendment. So that might be a way to open up, communication.
So Denise, are you done now, or?
So at this point, these are the recommendations. So we would be looking for a motion from council that staff are directed to begin drafting the policy and mapping changes, and that we would bring back the first draft of the proposed amendment would be provided for council review at a future meeting. And I would suggest that it may be appropriate to consider that next meeting a workshop with council, and that would allow us an opportunity to go into a bit more detail than we would during one of your normal council meetings, where there's obviously other items on the agenda and it's a bit more time sensitive.
I just want to reach out to Clerk Lamb. Should we be, I don't believe we should be passing the motion I just seen in front of me. I believe we have one on the agenda you want us to look at and pass if we're happy with it, Carson?
So if I may, Your Worship, because it's a public meeting, I would recommend that you hold off passing that motion until you kind of go through the next steps of your public meeting here. A lot of 5.1.3, I'm sure council has kind of already done, but certainly at this time, knowing that both Hannah and Denise have presented their report, it might be prudent to kind of go through the next steps and see if there's any comments from members of the public who.
Yeah, I was just concerned that. Yeah, thank you very much. That works out great for me. Okay, thank you, ladies. This is now an opportunity, 5.1.2. This is an opportunity to comment by others in attendance. Are there anyone besides councillors that would like to speak to this meeting tonight? And I'm going to ask, just speak up if you want to, because I don't obviously see everybody on my screen. Not hearing anyone. 5.1.3, this is an opportunity, a final opportunity for all councillors to ask any final questions that they may have not had a chance to ask earlier. Is there anyone with more questions? Councillor Hepper?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Reeve. This for Denise or Hannah. I'm just wondering if we could have at our next time up-to-date map, like I know Blythe, like, and it shows the industrial land there, but I was talking to a gentleman that I believe it's agriculture, that bottom half, the biggest part there. At least he led me to believe that it's agriculture. So I'm wondering if we could have like up to date. You said you're going to talk to people about properties or whatever. I'm just curious. Just a thought. Thanks.
Yeah. Absolutely. We'll bring the settlement area mapping, and we'll bring all the mapping, but we'll certainly bring the settlement mapping in a bit more detail so that we can take a look. And yes, that property in particular, I do believe it is designated industrial, though if that's not what the person wishes moving forward, we could certainly have a discussion with them about that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, thank you, Ray. It's just my final comment. Anything that relates to the natural heritage plan is it's a problem to me as a farmer, and I just can't accept it.
Thank you. Any other councillors have anything they would like to comment on? And actually, go ahead.
Yeah, just Deputy Reeve Sype here. I think Denise and Hannah's comment about having a little bit of a workshop to dive a little deeper into the official plan as well as the zoning bylaw amendment is an absolutely exceptional idea, in the sense that understanding how these two documents, I mean, I bet you over the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen 15 bylaw amendments or some other factor that would affect it. And I mean, it's definitely something I think is a very important thing that, councillors really understand what impact we are going to have on those types of things in a future council or wherever. So I think that's an excellent idea going forward. So I wholeheartedly support that idea.
Thank you very much, Deputy Reeve Sype. Okay, not seeing anyone else. Denise and Hannah, I want to thank you for a very professional evening. It was quite enjoyable, and I do believe you had lots of questions, concerns, and comments from council, which shows you that we're very concerned with this too, and we look forward to moving forward. So thank you very much for your presentation tonight. 5.1.4, direction of council that the next steps, that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby direct staff to evaluate community requests for suggestion, policy, and designation, the mapping, changes received through the consultation process, and draft a policy of mapping amendments to meet the requirements of Section 26 of the Planning Act, in addition to the other proposed revisions. Do I have a mover?
I will move that, Reeve.
Deputy Reeve moves, Sipes moves. Second, please. Seconder, please. Councillor Faulkner seconds. Thank you very kindly. Okay, Carson, it's all yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heifer,
I misunderstood. May I just say something, Reed? I misunderstood. I thought we're going to be not passing anything till we get our next meeting.
Yeah, we're just asking staff and council to continue and change the policies to what we've talked about.
basically you're directing Hannah and Denise to start carrying out those next steps and start engaging with the community so that they can and start doing that analysis and preparing those draft policies so that council has something to consider at the next meeting.
Yeah, we're not going through the policy, Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
So sorry. So we're going to have a chance to agree with that in a later date again. Like
Any
comes up
amendments would be brought forward for council's consideration at another meeting.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope to see a few amendments to it.
Yes.
Right, Denise? No. Okay. So I do believe I have a mover and a seconder. I had a mover and a seconder, so
Yeah.
I will hand it over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, and so far Councillor Falconer has voted. So Councillor Heifer,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
You're muted, Chris.
That was just as well. Unhappy, yes.
Counselor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. We have no closed session tonight. Confirmatory. That the bylaw number 25-2022 being a bylaw to adapt, confirm, ratify matters dealt with by the Council Township of North Huron at the February 24th, 2022 meeting be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, be signed by the Reeve and clerk and engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? I have Anita
Anita
Van
will move.
Heem moving. I have Deputy Reeve Sipes seconding.
So Counselor Heifer,
Yes.
Counselor Van Hittersum,
Yes, I still have a question for after this.
Counselor Palmer,
Yes, and I have a question too.
Counselor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight,
Yes.
Counselor Falconer, and Reeve Bailey.
Yes. I do not believe I can take more. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carson. My
Yeah,
apologies.
so that motion carries 7-0.
Yes, thank you. I do not believe after this I can take more questions or concerns, but if you can take them up with the staff, they can come out at the next meeting, okay? I'm pretty
My
sure
question is about
the-
the workshop, actually. Nothing about what we did tonight. It's about planning for the workshop. When will that happen? Is it during the day or at night, or when can we
Denise,
plan
if you,
that?
or Hannah, if you don't mind.
Staff will work with both Hannah and Denise to coordinate what that will look like, and we will certainly keep council informed of what that looks like.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, adjournment. The Council Township of North Huron agrees that there be no further business before council. The meeting is hereby adjourned at 7:31 p.m. Do I have a mover? I have Rick McBurney moving. Paul Heffer, I believe you second. Thank you. Carson, final time for the night.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Counselor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Counselor Palmer,
Yes.
Counselor McBurney,
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Sight,
Yes.
Counselor Falconer, Counselor Heifer,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 7-0.
Stay safe, everyone. We will meet again. Thank you.